But we'll it's Paris, so we'll take it as it comes. And it's live. But thank you guys all so much for joining. And we're up in the Haut Marais. And we are going to start right over here. We'll give everybody a minute to get in here. And Kate's there. Kate's our woman on the streets. And this first place we're going to go is a very fascinating museum that in the world of Paris museums, where there is a museum literally for everything. There's a museum for magic. There's all sorts of, like, if you are into it, there's a museum in Paris. But this one is one of the coolest museums you don't want to miss. And Kate was just saying, oh, there's such a huge line. And then I was like, oh, well, because they just reopened, I think a few months ago, or maybe back last fall, because they went through a renovation. But then we also remembered it's the first Sunday, so it's free museum day. They have a really cool special exhibit going on, but I should tell you what it is. So this museum right here is the Musée De La Chasse et la Nature. And so it's a museum of hunting and nature. And before you think, I'm not too into hunting, I don't know about that, do not pass up this museum. This is one of the coolest museums. It is really, really well done. It has some of I'll put some pictures of it and I'll put a link on my website to go check it out. They are doing some really kind of cool special exhibits, like 2 or 3 times a year, but then the collection itself is really cool. And you go to these 2 houses. So it's actually 2 houses that have kind of been merged together. And in it is there is taxidermy, but there's this one room that's just it's not a very big room, but it's all these covered glass covered cabinets, and it is all these different rifles and guns that had belonged to the kings and all this stuff. And even I was like, I don't know about I want to see that. But then they're gorgeous. They're scrolled silver handles and all this stuff. It actually is a really fascinating museum, and it is really cool. So don't skip it. I haven't been in since they did the renovation, so I'm excited to go see that. Usually it's a very quiet museum. And here we have 2 lines. On the right, you have the people that probably already had their tickets. On the left, you have the people that did not have their tickets. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. It is quite busy right now in Paris for the month of March. I think when it gets, and once it gets past March 20th, it's going to kind of quiet down a little as far as looking to see things right now. Versailles and some other places have days that are sold out. But the building itself, the 2 buildings were really cool. The museum was actually started by a couple, by Francois and Jacqueline Soumer, and they just loved nature and animals. And so they actually started down in the Ardennes, and André Malraux, who was a minister of culture under Charles de Gaulle, went through a big thing at the time. He's actually had created a bunch of the different expanded the institutes, and he was one of the major cultural ministers of basically French history. And so he actually wanted to incorporate and bring this museum to Paris. So it's 2 buildings. It's the Hôtel de Gangeot and the Hôtel de Montgat. And it was the first one. It was built in 1652 by Francois Mansart. And it is one of the only freestanding places in Paris that is still left untouched from what his original design was. So it's really cool to go in there and check it out. And there's this is it right across from here? I think there's this gorgeous door up here on the left, the next one. And it looks like it's really old and just amazing and has these 2 lovely ladies over it. But it's actually not that old at all. And it is a office of the French Telecom, but look at that door. It's just gorgeous. You have those lovely ladies, and it was done by Charles Camille Paul Blondel in the early 20th century. So, that is brand new. Whenever I see anything that says 1900, I'm like, oh, that's brand new. But it's really gorgeous, and I love those the stores. But this area around here, and especially on the right side of the street, most of the buildings on this side of the street are date back to the mid 1650s. And you have these, some of them used to be much larger and connected, and then over time they've kind of been split up. And of course, the numbers are opposites. They don't go like, 62 on one side, 63 on the other side. It's like 80 on one side and 60 on the other side. But I love this red one. This red one is really pretty. And these two, the red one and that kind of sea foamy bluish color, these used to be one big building. And then they were basically chopped in half over time. One is the Hotel de Villeflix, and the other is the Hotel de Pelletier. But the left side of the street where Kate is on is all like more, is all kind of older and more contemporary. You have the La Poste over here. So when you walk down the street, just look to the right. And we're on Rue des Archives. Thanks, Kate. Debbie, I'm sure even though it says Ronald Lily, I bet that was Debbie. But this one here, it looks like it's kind of one big, but there is a, you could kind of see it back against the wall. There's just a very thin door that goes in between these. And I remember coming down here on an early Sunday morning, which is the best time to walk around in Paris. It's pretty cool. Hi, Laura, you need to find Kate's image, and for Kate, and then you right click on it to on your, if it's an iPhone or an iPad, and then or you in the top right hand corner, you could hit the little blue button and pin it to your screen. I love this door over here too. That door up there is really pretty, and it has initials in there, but the initials didn't go with any of the names actually on that have lived there. They look like the L that they do for Louis XIV. But Rue des Archives, this street goes, it goes by the archives, the archives, which we have visited outside before, which is a really cool place to go check out when you're in Paris. Another place that nobody ever goes to. So there's quite a few museums here in the Marais, but there's quite a few that people, everybody goes to see the Picasso and especially the Carnavalet right now, but there's a lot of really cool museums here that are pretty quiet. The Musee De La Chasse, of course, it usually is very quiet, but because today is the free day. And I think on the left here, Kate, did we go past, are we right past the Fondation Henri Carter? It's not a very exciting looking building. I mean, yeah, that's it. So this is kind of a cool place, and this has only been open a little bit. Kate, have you been in here before?
I came in, they used to be in a different building.
Yeah.
In 2012.
Yeah.
Or 2013. I went then, but I haven't been to the new one.
Yeah, it used to be at Montparnasse.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, he's on the way.
Yeah.
Favorites,
so this is really cool because this is the amazing, I don't know if it has any they redid a garage is what it is in now. But Henri Cartier-Bresson is he does a lot of those beautiful black and white photos that we love about Paris, just like these absolutely gorgeous photos. And so they moved, they had a space up in Montparnasse, which is where he lived. In 2003, it was open, and then they moved it down here in 2013. So I have not been in there yet, so I'm excited to go check that out. They do some special exhibits from time to time as well. But he was born in 1908, and he started out actually as a painter, which I was kind of surprised. And he was really big with the surrealists. And then later on, he got into, when he was 1930, he was in the Ivory Coast for the military. And that is when he started getting into photography. But I mean, I'll put links and show pictures of all these things on my website. But you definitely will have been in love with his work if you love those great old pictures of Paris. And so right here, Kate, you could kind of like find a good spot around the corner and kind of hold on over there, like maybe across the street. So this area right here is, if you have been to the fantastic, the Musée des Enfants Rouges, this is, that was actually named after a children's hospital that was here. And the children's hospital actually was right where Kate was standing, and it stretched from her left all the way over there. So the building over the pressing store, the ironing store, that was part of the original hospital that was here. And it was head up by Marguerite de Navarre, who was the sister of Francois Premier when he was king, because at the Hotel Dieu on the Ile de la Cité, the children they just couldn't they weren't cared for. And so basically, if your children had to go to the hospital, they pretty much just died because they couldn't take care of them enough. And so she, was basically like trying to get him, she was like, can we have some money? We need to take care of these children. So he, of course, set this up and had the state give them a bunch of money to do this. And so they took over a big house that was over here, and they would dress the children in red. So that is why it's called Les Enfants Rouges, because I had always actually wondered what that was. What is going on here? Is that what's happening with that? What's that lady wearing? I want to think that was like some beautiful like chiffon thing. But so once it was here for over 200 years, close to 300 years, and it's basically saved the children. Under Louis XV, he basically stopped the funding for it, and the other hospitals had been created, so it wasn't a huge need for it as much. But after they decided to, Rue des Archives basically stopped right here. So right where you see those bushes and the ivy, that's basically where the street ended. So in 1796, it was cut all the way through. And so the building was separated and cut in half. It had been actually originally done in 6 pieces. And then they ended up, completely splitting it and carving out the whole middle. So some of the pieces there above the pressing and also on the right side of the street, some of those walls are from the original, but I was going to start it by going outside the Marais, but it's going to be really busy on a Sunday. So we'll do that go in there another day when it's not during the week, sometime when it's not so busy. But that's basically just out and around the street. But it is, it's pretty neat. We can't see it because of all that scaffolding, but you could kind of see into that courtyard. Can you see into that courtyard behind you where that scaffolding is, Kate? You never know what you're going to find as far as this was. Oh, it's not so pretty right now, is it? That was basically where part of it was. We could see now there's a very historic porta potty. So yeah, Janice, the enfant, it's basically named after that. And it's just kind of to the right. And when I was doing some research a while ago about it, because I was just really curious, like, why is it called, the Market of the Red Children? And that's ended up what I found. But it's around, I was thinking maybe like the house, the hospital it was built where the hospital, but it just kind of took its name more so than being right there. But it is a busy, you could tell how beautiful it is today in Paris. And we are going to head right into, but luckily, it would have been kind of fun to see the Valentino, but we'll see if the barricades and everything are still up there. That I've had lunch at this place one time. It was very good. And we're heading right at this. So this whole area is known as the Templars, and there's a reason for that. And we'll tell you the whole story when we get across the street. I think I was on that corner there one day when I saw a rat in the bushes, and so now I'm terrified. This guy, Michael, that I know in Paris, he's this really lovely man. And he always, I don't know if you guys follow him on Facebook, Michael Garay or something, but he's always like every day that I go across the Pont des Arts, he's there. And he is always taking these pictures of like this dead rat. And I have to send him a message and say, like, stop posting these pictures because I literally cannot, I'm going to have to like hide you. Because it just freaks me out too much. So this whole area right here was one time, very, very long time ago, was the palace of the Templars. And if you might know the Templars because of the Da Vinci Code. It's where, that's kind of the first time I ever heard of them. But they had this huge palace here. And then pretty much everything was taken down but the tower. And so the reason you might know of this tower is because this is where Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI and their family were taken. And it was basically right here in the ground. Sometimes they cover up these things when they do repave everything, but there used to be some markers on the ground that kind of outlined it, like you have over at the Bastille. This is now the mayor's office of the Paris Centre, which is in 2020, they decided to combine the first 4 arrondissements. So the first, second, third, and fourth now have one mayor, and this is where they are. So this used to just be the mayor's office of the third. But it was the Tower Temple was built in 1240 by the Templars. It just sat right here at the very edge. It had 4 very tall turrets. There was the Grand Turret Tower and the Petit Tower. And it was each level of the towers had little rooms, and they were each separated. During the Revolution on August 13th, 1792, the family of Louis XVI were moved into there. This was after, the whole thing happened, that they tried to escape, then they stormed the Tuileries, and then they were like, we got to lock these people, we got to put them under lock and key. So they moved them over here. At first, they were all together in one of the towers when they had like 5 rooms that they could move between. They were one of them was the library. So he was very happy because he basically just spent all his time reading. They could once a day walk outside for like 20 minutes up along the wall between the towers, but they'd have to be supervised the whole time. And their windows were covered so that they couldn't communicate with the people that would gather below and outside. But then on September 29th, Louis XVI was removed from the family, and he was moved over to the larger tower. And that is where he had to stay. And the family was back in the other tower, and they didn't know anything that was even going on. He ended up being taken eventually, as we kind of know. No spoilers on that one, what happened to him. But he was said to have read between August of 1792 and January 1793 over 257 books is what he said he read in that time. Because I guess, what else could you do? His death was voted on December 11th, 1792. It was 361 to 360 voting for his death. So when they tell you every vote counts, sadly, every vote counted. And there was people that he was, his family, people he was related to that voted for his death. But I really don't think, I think even if 10 people voted for his death and 700 against it, he probably definitely would have just been killed anyway. But on January 21st, 1793, of course, we know that he was killed at the guillotine. Back at the temple, the family was still there. They found out that what actually happened because people were screaming below, and they could overhear some of the people. That's how they found out, that basically she lost her husband. On July 3rd of 1793, Louis XVII, who was basically, could be said that he was now the king, their son. He was taken away from his mother and his aunt and his sister, and was put off by himself. And the whole story that happened to him is really quite tragic, because they knew that he now is technically could be, if they allowed it, that he could be the king of France. And so they did, his jailers were doing everything they could to try to convince him and like brainwash him against any of their royal ways. And he was given, he was just a child. He was like 7, 8 years old. They were giving him wine, and they just, he was barely feeding him. He was super malnourished. And then they convinced him to say that his mother and his aunt basically sexually abused him and all these other just really horrible things. So when when Marie Antoinette went on trial, that's how she found out. They basically asked her, what did you do? And you did this to your son. It was pretty horrible. Of course, she was very upset because, that did not happen. And they just were doing, they were trying to squash everything about him because they wanted rid of the royalty. But it's pretty sad. So on August 2nd, 1793, Marie Antoinette was then taken from here and taken to the conciergerie, the anti-chamber of death, they called it. She went on trial on October 14th, October 16th at 4:30 a.m. She was convicted, and by noon she was dead. So but it was all right here. And so, and then Louis Charles, who's the 17th, he was still there. 3 years later, or he had been there for 3 years. On May 6, 1795, they came and somebody had checked on him, and he was very sick. He had no hygiene. They basically would just give him very little food. He got very, very sick. And basically for 2 years, the last 6 months of his life, he had very little food. He was just in this dark room, and nobody really was there to see him. He was 10 years old on June 8th, 1795, when he died. And there was this whole thing for a long time where they think that he actually was able to escape and he survived. His heart, this very withered up little nugget of a thing, is in a really beautiful crystal urn that you could see at the Basilique Saint-Denis. And I'll see if I can, I'm sure I took pictures of it. I'll see if I could find them. But I was just like trying to see, what a heart front that was been in a glass, vase since 1795, what looked like. And it really doesn't look like anything, but I read this book about like, did he survive? This was like 10 years ago. And then of course you get to the end and like in one page, it's like, nope, they've done DNA no, that's definitely him. I was like, why did I just read this whole book? But it was very interesting. In 1808, Napoleon decided the temple still stood. He decided to take it down because the people that were against him, that were still royalists, used it basically as like, this monument to the monarchy. And so, Napoleon couldn't have that. You can't be, looking for, wanting to have this other period when he's the emperor. So it took 2 years to fully take it down, but it stood here. I think Kate, where she's standing right now, she's pretty much standing inside the temple because it kind of was stretched back from where she is out into the garden. But I did have to, one of my very early trips to Paris, I did have to come here and check it out. And then this lovely garden, look at the flowers. Next week, we change our clocks, guys, here in the States. Is everybody ready for that? I'll just be happy for more light. It's going to be so great, except for when I go to bed before it's dark, because I wake up every day at 1:30 a.m. But this lovely park, this is the Square de Temple, which is also known as the Elie Wiesel Park. It was put together in 1857. This was one of those things that was done under Napoleon III and Haussmann when they had a plan to bring a garden within 10 minutes of every neighborhood. So this is a rather large one. In the spring, from mid-April to mid-October, this is one of those ones you could actually go out onto the grass. This little pond here, the rocks that are in there are from the Fontainebleau. So that's kind of cool. I love how they have all those little flowers there. This is an English garden, Kate. So it's very much very much at home. And that's usually the difference between a French garden and a English garden is the French garden is very geometric and very laid out, and an English garden is just very lush and just kind of everywhere. And you have daffodils. Does everybody have their daffodils blooming where they are? Mine still, no, Janice. I have the shoots have come up, but there's none of the buds have come up, but I'm waiting. And then I always bring them inside, and then those little tiny ants are hiding in there, and then they and then they drive me crazy. But that lovely little musician kiosk there, that dates back to 1900. So this is definitely one of those parks where, this is very much of a neighborhood park, like people, Jardin de Luxembourg and the Tuileries are more people passing through, and of course sitting and stuff. But this is one where you will really see the neighbors. And you have these great, beautiful lampposts. And of course we have our Daffodil benches. This one is called the Gondola Bench, which you'll see all over Paris. That one looks like it needs a little bit of a paint job. But he also created the kiosk. I was thinking when I was like, I need to do a whole thing in my newsletter or something about the creators of all these great things in Paris, the Morris columns and but look at this, a beautiful day there, 5:30 at night. So we're getting later. They don't change their clocks till the 27th. So I'll be on a plane when they change their clock. But then I think next weekend, I think we're 8 hours apart, Kate, I think, from the West Coast. But in this garden, there is a statue of Pierre Jean de Béranger. He lived around that area. He was a singer who died in 1879. But it's this really pretty park. There's always, every time I've been here, it's always been a really nice day. And so there was always tons of people here. But there's also another bus that's buried kind of into the bushes that is of Willa, and he was a gentleman that basically, there's our Béranger. Willa was basically a man that brought back choral and singing back into the schools because it was outlawed during the revolution. Could you imagine that? I wonder if that was like Footloose, no singing, no dancing. But he also lived around here, and it's called the Willa Method, and it's still basically taught today in the schools for the theory of, learning the notes and then learning the bars and everything, which is really pretty cool. But it is, and sadly, over there to the left, you see that big, huge, there's a gorgeous brick building over here. Well, there's this one, but there's another one over there too that is all hidden away from us, so we can't see it. But you have some really great buildings up here. And this is the Haut Marais. So we are not far from the Place de la Republique, which we will we'll see. We're going to venture towards there, but it is the weekend. Yesterday, there definitely was people gathered against the war in Ukraine. And so we will see if we could get close. You could go, I could go at this side, and then we're going to go to the right, and we're going to just see if we could get close. But the park itself with the Square de Temple, it was also the mayor of Paris wanted to, in 2016, wanted to rename it to the Elie Wiesel, who was a Romanian-born American, an amazing, amazing man. And then they ended up, people weren't thrilled about just completely changing the name. So it's the Square de Temple. That is a great, gorgeous building. And we'll go over to the right. And he was this amazing man. He was 15 years old when Hitler sent he and his family to Auschwitz. As soon as they got there, his mother and his sister were killed, gassed. His father also did not survive, but in April 1945, he and his two sisters were thankfully released when the Americans arrived, and he came to Paris. So here is the aftermath of the Valentino show. I'll come back to Ellie because his story is really amazing. But this gorgeous building right here, it is not like the pavilions that were at Les Halles, but it gives you that idea of what they were. This is the Carreau du Temple, and it was a market that stood covering there was quite a few buildings, but the market itself, there was a market here. You can see that pink? Look at that. Oh, that pink is just gorgeous. A market stood in this area since the Middle Ages, and then a rotunda was built here and placed in it, cut to cover it. And that actually stood for quite a long time. But this market, there would be goldsmiths, they'd sell fur. It was kind of a luxury market at the time. And it now is, now it had Valentino in there today. But this in 1863, the rotunda was demolished. It was all made of stone. And then this one was created. It's by Ernest Legrand and Jules de Mirandel, and it's all made of cast iron and glass. There was originally 6 of these. So this is 2. So this was 2 of them. So just think of this as 3 times larger, covering this area. They ended up taking down, they actually wanted to get rid of all of them and put a parking lot here, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. But luckily everybody got ticked off about that. And thankfully, because this is a gorgeous building, it now has events in there. As we know, it had the Balmain show a couple days ago. Today is Valentino. And so it is a gorgeous place to go. If you go by here, if you're in this area, pop over there to see, because sometimes it'll be, a market of some sort that you could go just pop in there and take a look at it. But it is really beautiful. Go online and watch the Valentino or the Balmain show, because you could kind of there's these beautiful cast iron pillars in there. And it's really pretty, but it does give you that idea of a little bit of what Les Halles was. And Les Halles was built, those pavilions were built in 1850 by Baltard, of course. Look at this. Everything's getting busy. Starting, if you're going to Paris, starting March 14th, you no longer have to use the vaccine pass. If you were going, your CDC, if you're going before then, your CDC card is just fine to show everywhere. Look at this gorgeous, Germain Pilon. That's the name of the person that was involved with Carlos Casamegas. I'll have to look into this a little bit more, that she also was a mistress of Picasso for a short period of time. So Kate, over there on that left, on that corner in front of you, other way, back where you were, towards that wall, head over to that wall. This is a school, and this is another school over here, but this wall is really cool. And this wall will basically show you what this area was. So it's this little map of the Quartier du Temple. And we could see on here where the garden is. So you see where it says La Tour, right below that, that was the tower, the prison. And you can see the Palais over there. So basically right above that was where the garden is now, and that's the mayor's office. So what's there in the black outline, so the Église and the La Tour, that is what was there before. Nothing remains of that. But you could kind of see this whole little area. We're also going to go by that Église Saint-Elizabeth. We'll see if we could get in there. But there's also kind of in that lower left-hand corner, that's kind of gives you an idea of what the Temple prison looked like. Big, huge, tall towers. And I'm sure it just, was just brick and cold and very little light and just not great. But this is really cool because you get to see what that looked like at one point on this great wall. And it's just kind of hiding back here on the back of this little church or school with that. They need to fix that up.
And look at this. Can you see the peeling paint?
Yeah,
It's so sad.
it is very sad. I hate seeing that kind of stuff.
Offer
We
my
need to-
services, I think.
Madame Ilgo needs to, she's not going to win her presidency. She needs to get back to work.
Yeah.
The Carreau de Temple, Janice, is what that was. I'll put all of this on my website. I put tons and tons of notes. I tried to start writing them all up this morning. It's going to take me, I have a lot that I'll put together, but I put it on my website where there's a link at the top, it'll say live walks in Paris. And if you click that, you could, sometimes it's 8 or 9 pages of information, and you could actually even print that up and take it with you and then pull us up on YouTube and walk where we walked, and you could see all these things on your own when you come back. But this is quite the lively little area. And you have all, it's really nice, even though Kate and I were saying we like the kind of the pandemic Paris when it was pretty quiet, but it is nice to see all this life coming back into the terraces and everything. I can't wait.
And this is a really nice, really cool art bookshop as well.
Yeah.
If any of you guys are into that. It's a great one. They have loads of rare or like very limited edition.
Oh,
books.
I love it. Does the church look like it's open? So this church here is it's the Saint Elizabeth Church of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. And I think it was just last weekend, it's all a blur, that we had that passage that was named after the Queen of Hungary, because that woman that worked at Leal, it looks like we're closed up, but she worked at Leal and she looked like the Queen of Hungary, which was the mother of Marie Antoinette. And so now we have Hungary. Sometimes it's just like all these little links just kind of keep continuing in the walks. It looks kind of like we're closed up, huh? Well,
but the gates are open.
I know, very strange. But it's very this church actually, it was Marie de Medici that laid the first stone here. Apparently they don't want people to come into church today on a Sunday. But if you speak Mandarin, every weekend there is a Mandarin service there. But the church itself dates back to Marie de Medici. It was finally completed under Anne of Austria. Can we go down this little, is there anything cool on the side of it? Well, and we have that great tower up there. But Saint Elizabeth she was a daughter of King Andre II of Hungary. So in a way, she was related to Marie Antoinette. She was betrothed at 4 years old, which is just always creepy. At 14 years old, she married Louis IX of Thuringia. And that was it in 1221. In 1227, her husband died. And at 20 years old, she refused to marry ever again and decided to devote herself to the church. She put her crown down at the foot of the cross, and her mother-in-law was, completely aghast, because that is not what a princess does. But when she was married, the reason why she's a saint, and this is the miracle that is attached to her. She was just really, she was always giving all of her time and money and anything she could to those that were unfortunate, to the poor and those that were hungry. And she one day under her cloak had a bunch of loaves of bread that she was taking from the palace to go outside to give people. And her husband said, what do you have under there? And so she lied and said that she had a bunch of roses. And he didn't believe her, and he opened up her cloak, and she didn't, and the bread had turned into roses. So it is the miracle of the roses. This was, of course, in the 13th century. I remember when Mother Teresa died, and everybody was talking about how she needs to be sainthood. And do you have to prove now that they've had like 3 miracles? It's much harder now to be a saint, but you had to have like 3 miracles, and you have to go through all of these different things. Apparently just turning your bread into flowers was good enough to become a saint back then. Because I couldn't find any other things really about her. But look, that's gorgeous. Gorgeous, Kate. And of course we love a red door. But inside that church is some really cool things. It has some stained glass that shows her turning, her holding roses, some that have her holding loaves of bread. There's also a painting of Louis XVI being taken from the temple, from the prison. So there's some really, really gorgeous things inside. So definitely go and check it out. It's was originally dedicated to Saint Francis, and then later it was changed over to Saint Elizabeth. But I definitely go in there, pop in there when you are there to go check it out. During the Revolution, the nuns were kicked out of there. And then it ended up being a flour depot, as a lot of the churches, you know, became ammunition depot and wine depots, and used for everything like that. So, but then it all came back. It is actually, it's pretty quiet up here, Kate.
Yeah, the people are all heading the other way. So I
Yeah.
think there's another fashion show going on.
Yes. Yeah, the fashion, it's always funny, you know, because they're, you know, what we saw for Valentino, they were in an existing structure, but, you know, they'll take sometimes 6 weeks in the Cour Carré behind the Louvre. Louis Vuitton will spend 6 weeks or more building, look at that shot, building a freestanding, you know, structure for a 10-minute fashion show costing, you know, how many millions of dollars. It always kind of kills me how much money is spent on that stuff, but I guess they must be getting it back. There's over here on across the street, there is a bakery up a little bit that has, they saved all of these gorgeous ceilings that were in there, done in 1870.
Is it Maison Lendemain?
I think it's just over to the right. It doesn't look, it looks kind of older from, it looks newer from the outside, and it has been renovated, but they kept the ceilings in there. Karen, bread is made from flour.
Tells you a lot about my mum's baking knowledge.
Yeah.
Put roses in it.
Flour with the W-E-R. If it was like, I don't know, I think if you opened up her cloak and you had French bread hiding under it, I'd consider that a miracle too. I'd be super okay if somebody came to me and opened up and had baguettes underneath their coat. I think it's like this. Is this a bakery right here? The next one?
It is.
Oh,
well,
maybe
it is open. It is open.
Oh, it is? Can we
Wait.
see the ceiling?
Oh no.
Oh no.
But you can see the ceiling.
Look at that. Well,
also, if anyone is not eating dairy for whatever reason and you miss croissants, this place does the best non-dairy croissant.
Oh, good to
and pain au
know.
chocolat and tartine aux pommes as well. So
Good to know. I have noticed that maybe I need to not eat dairy because I don't feel so great, which might be the worst thing somebody could have ever told me.
yeah, it's not a great place to live if you don't eat dairy, but it's possible.
I'm just not eating it now. And then when I'm back in 3 weeks, I'll eat all of it and see how it goes. But we are heading here. I don't think this place needs any sort of introduction. This is the Place de la Republique. And look at that beautiful light. We're timing this just perfectly, Kate. Every time I come by here, I took a taxi. I was meeting this guy up here at the Place de la Republique, and I had taken a taxi over, and we took a right, and I was sitting on the driver's side of the car, and I opened up the door. He said it was okay. I opened up the door, and this fancy like convertible Mercedes went by, and when I opened up the door, it hit their their rear view or their side mirror, and it popped it off. And the taxi told me it was okay to open the door. And then he started just like, of course, this car came to a screeching halt. The taxi driver was freaking out. And I, at this point, like I barely had any French that I knew. This was like 5 years ago. And I just was kind of in a panic for a minute, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What if like the window is broken and then they want me to pay for it? And am I going to go to jail? I went through about 10 scenarios in about 14 seconds, but it popped right back on and they drove off. Everything was fine. But I can't ever come to this area without having a little bit of a just like shudder go through me of remembering that moment. But this area, this is this beautiful. It's been really cleaned up over time. When it was first created, it was another one of those places that was created with Osman and Napoleon III. And I'm glad that if there was a demonstration here, it would have been fine, but I'm glad that there's not, so we could really get nice and close to this gorgeous statue that's here. But it was basically we're at the like intersection between the 3rd, 10th, and the 11th arrondissement. And look at that light. So beautiful, Kate. Tell those people to get off of it. But the statue of Marianne is, of course, up there. And it used to be it was the Place de la Chateau d'eau, because there was a huge fountain here a very long time ago in 1811. In 1877, our guy Gabriel Daviau, again, that we've mentioned many times today, he created a fountain here with big lions on it. But then they decided on the 90th anniversary of the revolution that they wanted to add a different statue here. So of course, as they did back, they still do when they need something like this, they put out it goes as a competition. And so different artists put in what their plans are. And this one was chosen by two brothers. It's Leopold and Charles Maurice. And it was, they decided they loved this one. And then, but there was another one done by Jules Dalou, who did a ton of the statues of Paris. They loved his as well. And so they couldn't choose. So they put Dalou's over at the Place de la Nation. But this one was inaugurated in gypsum and on July 14th, 1880. And 3 years later, the bronze edition came, and there she is. She is holding in her hand, and she's really beautiful. I'll post some pictures of her, but really look at photos that you can see up close of her. She's really gorgeous. In her left hand, she's holding an olive branch, and on her right, she has her hand on a tablet that is of the rights of man is done in it. And in the front, you see at the bottom, you see a lion. The lion is guarding a ballot box. And then the three ladies that are around there in stone are liberté, égalité, and fraternité, which is basically the motto of France. And each one is a little bit different. And then around the base of it, you have these high reliefs that basically are episodes in the history of France leading up to it being from the revolution to creating the Republic. And of course, you've seen this. It's just a gorgeous. Look at how beautiful that is. This, of course, after the terrorist attacks in the Charlie Hebdo, and then again with the Bataclan and all of those ones, this became a huge place that people came to leave remembrance. It was that was a pretty moving time, but look at how gorgeous that iron, the bronze is there, just like all of the scroll work. The reliefs are really, really cool. It starts with the oath of the Jeu de Paume, and then ends with the first national holiday, and the 14 Juillet, or Bastille Day, as only America calls it. But this is always a big site. There was a huge rally yesterday there for the war in Ukraine. And there's always, this is one of the big starting points or ending points when they do any of the protests and things like that. But it was, it used to just be a turnaround. And then in 2008, the mayor wanted to make it even larger of a space. So that's where you see it is today. Oh, look at, they have all those little Ukrainian flags on there. But it has all the dates of all these things. So July 14th, 1880, the very first. But that's the scroll work, that bronze scroll work on here is just absolutely gorgeous. And the lighting is just really beautiful. And we're not very far from the Canal Saint-Martin and into the 10th. And so this is a pretty big area. You could come here and check everything out. But I was going to go through, I was like, well, we'll go through and tell about every one of the bas reliefs on here. And I'll give you the history. But then I was like, oh, that would take us an additional hour, but I'll do it. I'll write it all up and do that someday and share it. That'll be on my mini list. But the foundry that actually did the Marianne and the lower parts of it, the Théobald Frère foundry, they had family basically did most of those beautiful statues, including the Statue of Liberty, the large one that's on the end of the Swan Island, they call it. And also the Jeanne d'Arc, the beautiful golden Jeanne d'Arc. Charlemagne, that's in front of the Notre Dame. He also did, what's the other one? Oh, the Fontaine Saint-Michel. So they really are behind the creation of a lot of those, and even did some stuff, the family did some stuff for Rodin as well. So they have been involved in a lot of the great statues that you see around the city. And there's a big, huge metro stop underneath here as well, a pretty big one. But I think if you go straight down that street right there, I think you head towards the Canal Saint-Martin. So it's a great little area, and I'm glad it wasn't so full of people that we could share it with you today. And this gorgeous light. Are we all happy? Aren't we all happy that spring is coming back? It is, especially since I know that some people on the East Coast, I think you still have snow right now. So hopefully that goes soon. I see Kathleen just nodding her head. But hopefully we get past that and we have some warm and sunnier days ahead. And that I hope all of you are hoping and planning to get back to Paris soon. And I will put more information. I had some more stuff I was going to share about the fantastic Musee de la Chasse, which you definitely need to go and check out. But Elie Wiesel, so he ended up, just because he was such an amazing person, he was a writer, but he basically worked his whole life doing basically just spreading the awareness of the Holocaust, and basically to help for those that sadly lost their life in that, or the people that survived through it, because the people that had to live through it, had to keep that with them their whole life. He was behind setting up quite a few Holocaust remembrance organizations and monuments. He was even supposed to write a book with President Obama at the time, but I think he died before that could happen, sadly. But he was an absolutely amazing human being that was sadly had to live through all of that. He even won the Nobel Peace Prize. So pretty cool, amazing guy. So it's nice that he was Romanian, and then he lived in Paris for a while. He went to the Sorbonne, and then he also in the 60s became an American citizen. So I think he was like a triple citizen of the world, and did so much for all those people that sadly were killed out of a horrible, horrible period, which is hopefully we will be ending that again soon, when we don't hopefully have to go through this again. So Thank you guys all so much for joining us today. And if you would love to send us a little tip or anything, we would appreciate that. We love bringing these to you. And that would help us keeping this going. And so you could send it to my PayPal or my Venmo, which is Claudine@ClaudineHemingway.com. I put a link in there too. And we would appreciate it. And next week, I think we actually are going to go not that far from here and go around the Canal Saint-Martin. And then the week after that, because it's the first day of spring, we are going to go to the Jardin des Plantes and hopefully see some stuff blooming. Hopefully not too much. I'm really hoping those pink cherry blossoms wait for me to get there. I keep telling my French friends to tell them to stop. Just go and tell the trees to wait. But I don't really think it works that way. But thank you guys all so much. And Kate, even though this view is beautiful, she'll come on and say hi to us too, so her mom could see her. There she is.
Hello.
There's Kate, gorgeous Kate.
A bit noisy over here.
A little bit noisy, but thank you guys all so much. And thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Really
Yes,
nice one.
earlier, I thought your scarf, I thought it was like, all I saw was the blue and yellow. And I thought it was this pretty Ukrainian scarf. But
Yeah,
it worked.
I realized that when we started the call. Actually,
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very pretty. But thank you guys all so much for joining us. And thank you, Kate. And we're glad that we have better weather for you to be walking around for us.
No, blue skies.
Blue
Continue.
Yeah, but thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. Oh, and it's also in France today. It's Grandmother Day. So the best.
Yeah.
I'm going to go visit my grandma, take her
Grandma
some.
party.
Yeah. Yeah, bring her some more chocolate. Keeps her happy at 99 years old.
Oh.
So, but thank you guys all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Kate.
Everyone.